The diner was quiet that evening, the kind of silence that sits heavy in the air right before something breaks. Outside, the sky was bruised with rain clouds, and the neon sign flickered, painting the cracked parking lot in a pulsing red glow. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee hung in the air, the old jukebox in the corner humming faintly, playing a forgotten country tune. At the counter stood Emily, a 21-year-old waitress with tired eyes and a smile she forced to hide her exhaustion. She'd been on her feet for 10 hours, serving strangers, wiping tables, pretending everything was fine. But behind that small-town diner window, fate was waiting to change her life forever. And it began with a single cruel act. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and that life always finds a way to humble arrogance, then please, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that touch the heart. Because this one will. That night, a group of teenage boys stormed into the diner, loud, entitled, and dripping with wealth. Their designer jackets and diamond watches clashed with the worn-out booths and flickering lights. They didn't belong there, and they knew it. But they were bored, restless, looking for something, or someone, to take their frustration out on. The leader of the group, a rich 17-year-old named Lucas, had a smirk that carried generations of privilege. His father owned half the real estate in town. His mother sat on charity boards she never visited, and he drove a car that cost more than the diner itself. Emily greeted them with her usual warmth, though her voice trembled slightly. She could tell trouble when she saw it. She brought their menus, smiled, and said softly, "Let me know when you're ready to order." But Lucas wasn't listening. He was too busy laughing at something on his phone, surrounded by friends who mirrored his cruelty like echoes in a canyon. When Emily returned with their food, Lucas decided he didn't like how long it took. "Took you long enough," he sneered. "What were you doing, sleeping in the kitchen?" His friends laughed. Emily apologized gently, explaining that they were short-staffed tonight, that the cook was new, but her humility only fueled his arrogance. He picked up his drink, an expensive soda he barely touched, and before anyone could react, he spat in her direction. The dark liquid hit her apron and cheek, dripping down slowly as the diner went dead silent. For a few long seconds, no one moved. Emily froze, her hands trembling, her eyes glistening with humiliation. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came out. Lucas leaned back, proud of himself, his friends howling with laughter like it was all some cruel joke. The world felt smaller to Emily in that moment, as if every dream, every bit of strength she'd gathered just to make it through the week, had been crushed beneath the heel of someone who would never understand what it means to struggle. But what Lucas didn't know was that in the far corner of the diner, 10 men had witnessed everything. 10 men in black leather jackets, their backs emblazoned with the unmistakable patch, Hell's Angels. They weren't there to start trouble. They'd just finished a long ride and had stopped in for coffee and pie before heading home. But when they saw the way that rich boy humiliated that young waitress, the quiet dignity with which she wiped her tears, trying not to let them fall, something deep, something primal stirred in them. The leader, an older man named Briggs, set down his coffee cup slowly. His knuckles were scarred, his eyes gray and calm like a storm that hasn't yet broken. Around him sat men who'd seen war, loss, and pain. Men who understood respect, not the kind you buy, but the kind you earn. And what they saw before them burned like gasoline on an open flame. As Emily retreated to the back kitchen trying to hide, her shaking hands, the angels stood up one by one. The sound of 10 heavy boots echoed through the diner like distant thunder. The laughter at Lucas's table faded, replaced by the uneasy silence of boys who suddenly realized they were not alone. Briggs walked over, calm and deliberate, his boots clicking against the tile. He didn't yell, he didn't need to. He just placed a hand on Lucas's table and looked him dead in the eye. In that stare, Lucas felt something he'd never felt before. Fear that didn't come from being caught, but from being seen. Seen for what he really was. Briggs leaned in slightly, his voice low but sharp as a knife. "Apologize." Lucas blinked, stammering, What? Briggs repeated, quieter. "You humiliated that girl. Fix it." The boys shifted uncomfortably. One of them whispered, "Come on, man, let's just go." But the angels had subtly surrounded the table. There was no leaving, not yet. Lucas tried to play it off to act cool. "It was just a joke, old man. Don't make a big deal out of it." Briggs's jaw tightened. He stepped closer until their faces were inches apart. "You just spat on someone who's working for a living. You don't get to call that a joke." His voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. The weight of truth in it made Lucas's chest tighten. The boy's arrogance began to crumble under the gravity of real authority, the kind that doesn't come from money, but from pain, experience, and a lifetime of hard lessons. Briggs turned his head slightly and called toward the kitchen. "Ma'am?" His voice softened when he spoke to Emily. "Could you come out for a moment?" Emily hesitated, wiping her face before stepping out. Her eyes were red, but her posture straight. She didn't know who these men were or why they were stepping in. She just knew she didn't want more trouble. "It's okay," she whispered. "Please, just let it go." Briggs nodded respectfully. "I would, if he meant it. But I think he needs to understand what a real apology sounds like." Lucas's hands were shaking now. He looked around. No one laughed anymore. The other customers were watching in silence. Finally, he muttered, "I'm sorry." Briggs tilted his head, louder. "I said I'm sorry!" Emily looked at him, and for the first time, there was no anger in her eyes, just disappointment. "It's not me you owe that to," she said quietly. "It's yourself, for forgetting how to be human." Those words hit harder than any punch ever could. Briggs studied her for a moment, then nodded in quiet approval. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a $100 bill, and placed it gently on the counter. "For your trouble," he said, "and for your strength." The angels walked out moments later, their engines roaring like thunder rolling across the hills, leaving the diner buzzing with whispers. Lucas stood there, shaken. For the first time in his life, he felt small, not because someone belittled him, but because he realized how empty his pride had been. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing Emily's eyes, hearing Briggs's voice, and feeling the sting of his own shame. The next morning, he did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He drove back to the diner, alone, without his friends or his arrogance. Emily was wiping tables when he walked in. She froze, unsure whether to run or brace herself for another insult. But Lucas's expression was different, softer, uncertain. He placed a small envelope on the counter. "This is for you," he said quietly. Inside was a handwritten note and a thick stack of cash. The note read, "For the way I treated you. I can't erase what I did, but I want to start making it right. Thank you for reminding me what decency looks like." Emily didn't know what to say. Tears welled up, not from pain this time, but from the rare beauty of seeing someone truly change. "Thank you," she whispered. Lucas just nodded and left. But before driving away, he looked up at the clouds breaking over the morning sun and felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Over the months that followed, Lucas changed more than anyone could have expected. He started volunteering at shelters, visiting the diner regularly, not as a customer, but as a helper, bussing tables, washing dishes, doing the work he once mocked. People talked, of course. Some said he was doing it for attention, but those who saw him up close knew better. He wasn't looking for forgiveness anymore. He was living it. And as for Emily, she eventually finished nursing school, thanks in part to the anonymous donations that began arriving after that night. She never found out that some of those envelopes came from Lucas himself, but maybe deep down she suspected. A year later, on a bright summer morning, the rumble of engines filled the street outside the diner once again. 10 Hells Angels parked their bikes, walked in, and took their seats at the counter. Briggs looked around, smiling faintly. "Coffee and pie?" he said, and Emily laughed, recognizing the voice. She served them with a grin this time, confidence replacing the fear she'd once felt. When Briggs handed her the bill, there was a note scribbled beneath the total. Good people still exist. Don't let the bad ones change you. That night after they left, Emily locked the door, leaned against the counter, and let a single tear roll down her cheek. A tear of gratitude, of peace, of knowing that even in a cruel world, kindness still has power. And somewhere down the road, Lucas kept driving, feeling the wind on his face, not as the boy who spat on a waitress, but as the young man who finally learned what respect means. He'd carry that lesson for the rest of his life. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs faith in humanity, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us what really matters.